Hey guys, so I'm so happy you're here. Welcome to the online furniture painting class. This is How to Paint Furniture 101. So we're going to start with all the basics and we're going to take you through the whole process. So with this piece, I will be painting this, well, prepping it tonight and then painting it on Saturday and potentially coming back for another one if we need to do finishing later. We'll see how that all goes. But I'll be showing you this entire process. So you will know all the tips and tricks. We've been doing this for, well, 2 years of painting furniture, but 19 years of painting in general. So I went to a trade school for painting and decorating, and I was really good for high school, and that was a lot of fun. And then kind of lost it and came back to painting for as furniture, and it's so much fun. It's a great hobby to transform pieces that you own, or maybe pieces that you want to offer for sale someday, and then make a little bit of money. So it's a great process. So when you think about what kind of piece that you want to paint, keep in mind a bunch of things. You want to start with a piece that is in really good shape as possible. So sometimes you want to watch out for things like if the finish is failing or if someone's already painted it. You might need to do a little bit more prep work at the beginning in order to overcome those issues down the line. You can paint nearly anything, but if you have any pieces that have particle board or have some kind of failing issue on them, if they need a lot of repairs that you don't know how to do, those might be signals that you should suggest maybe pick up a different piece. So they're really easy to find. You can find some really great pieces anywhere, so ask your friends. Most people have something in their home that they don't necessarily love, but that could be a really great project. So you could do that. There's also like thrift stores or Facebook Marketplace. We've been really successful with finding some great pieces. So look for, I kind of like the grandma pieces. So grandmothers typically have solid wood furniture. They are typically well cared for. And they're just really nice pieces with great details that you can then emphasize with a great paint job. So that's what I always say. Look for kind of grandma's piece. And then we want to start and prep it. So once you have your piece selected, think about what kind of finish you want. So if you're looking for a piece, if you have a piece and it has a lot of like flats, maybe mid-century modern, or a lot of really just solid areas, doing one coat color finish might be the best approach for that. It's really easy to do. It's not going to have a lot of complications perhaps. Whereas when you get to details with a lot of, or pieces with a lot of like details and intricacies, sometimes those are areas that are prone for, runs or drips, or they might be dirtier because they've kind of settled in there. So, and also depending on your finish, you might want to then kind of emphasize those details or not. So if you have any pieces, I would love to help you kind of figure out a game plan. I suggest starting with a pretty simple project to start. So maybe it's a dresser, it's kind of a medium grade. You might want to start with some like decor objects, or an end table is like a really great piece so that you can play with it and learn both the paint that you like and then your technique, your finishes, and then move on to that larger piece, because you want to build some confidence first. And that's what we're going to do during the course of this project. So I really want to be able to help you with whatever questions you have. Like I said, I've been doing this for quite a while. If you're watching on the replay, which I know a lot of you will, you can still type in any questions. You could also pop into the group, and if you want to post your piece, I'd love to see what you're going to be doing and help you with that. And I also get notifications whenever you comment. So if you have questions as we go, please let me know. This is going to be probably a longer video, but what we're going to cover, and I'll go through it quickly, is the prep work tonight. So we are going to do everything from, we're going to start with removing the hardware, and then we're going to clean the piece. So you want to start by cleaning, because should there be anything grimy and dirty and oily and gross, if you were sanding it, that would potentially grind in those issues. And then you would have all of the debris potentially in the wood grain. And that would be difficult to then get a nice finish over that, potentially. So a lot of these processes are kind of preventative. I've noticed that most of the issues that people have with furniture painting are because they didn't prep it properly in the first place. So sometimes it feels like we might be going overboard, but that actually is going to save you on the back end. Because if you don't clean it and remove that grime, and then you paint it and it's beautiful and you're finished, and then a lot of people top coat and it starts to yellow. And they like to blame the top coat, but what it actually is most likely something that wasn't addressed at the beginning that's now starting to bleed through, because the top coat will kind of pull through some of those stains or maybe tannins that if you don't address the beginning, in the end, you have to go back and redo it, and that stinks. So I'm trying to help you avoid those things, because that is so frustrating. And these steps will help you avoid failure. Or just a piece that you don't like because it doesn't look quite right. So we will remove the hardware, we're gonna clean it so that we get all that grimy, potentially filmy issues off. And then we're going to sand it. So you sand it to create tooth. And what that is just little like micro abrasions so that your paint has something nice to grip onto. And this is with any kind of paint. So I know there are plenty of paint companies that are promoting like no prep. I think that's a little far-fetched. Many of them will still bond, but if there's any of like oils, they're gonna have a point of failure there potentially. So even with the no prep brands, I would still do these things. Clean it, sand it, and then get to your actual paint. So we will clean, sand, and then we'll talk about priming as well, because priming is another really, I don't want to say controversial, but a lot of people try to avoid it, and then they realize that it is necessary in many cases, and I'll tell you about why and which ones we use. And they're all linked in that Furniture Painting Essentials PDF as well. So all that information for the products that I'm talking about is all going to be there. So the things that we are going to use tonight are, so I have my drill. So this is just to remove the hardware. This is optional. So if you don't have one, not a problem. In that case, you would use screwdrivers. Most of your hardware is going to be either Phillips or flathead. So these two are usually enough that anyone, a good thing to have in your toolkit. That'll solve a lot. So from there, we're going to put all of your hardware in a plastic baggie, label it, because there's nothing more frustrating than wondering what hardware came from what piece, and then put it in a safe spot that you remember. If you're doing a bunch of pieces, I always recommend putting them in like one spot. So we actually have a tote with all of our hardware of the in-progress pieces so that we know where it is, because it has been frustrating if someone puts it somewhere else and then you need it. So put it in a safe spot, because you won't need it again for a couple days. And then we're going to clean. So I like to use these shop towels. So these are pretty much really heavy duty paper towels. These are available at on the Amazon, in our Amazon shop. You can also get them in any hardware store. They're typically, I think they're used for like auto body a lot. Or if you just want to use paper towels, you can do that as well. So these are just household paper towels. They just don't hold up the same way. So that's why we go for the blue ones a lot of the time. And what we're going to use to clean is a mix of denatured alcohol, which is basically rubbing alcohol. It's just a tiny bit different. So if in a pinch, you could use rubbing alcohol, and then you want to cut it 50-50 with water and then put it in a spray bottle. So that's what we do here. This is our 50-50 mix, and this is our standard cleaner. So this will remove grime, wax, polishes, a lot of nasty stuff. And then if you really have a piece that's very dirty, that has incredible buildup or something odd, then you can go to something a little more heavy duty. So this is one that we recently tried, and I really, really like it. So I don't know if you can see the label. There we go. So this is Maison Blanche Prep and Clean. And what this does, or cleaner and prep, spray it on, let it sit for a minute, and then it starts like bubbling and really like eating at whatever's on there. So we actually took a video of it the other day because I thought that was interesting. And then you can just wipe off the nasty gunk. So this can be a dirty process. This worked really well to cut through the excessive dirtiness of a piece that we were doing recently. So I would start with the denatured alcohol, and then if you really have to address an issue, then move on to something like this. And then from there, I also recommend, they say you can just paint over it. What I would do is then just do a quick wipe with the denatured alcohol to make sure that everything flashes off. Because the alcohol actually, it dries really fast and it kind of, I don't know, takes everything with it. And then you can, after that, alcohol, ghosting. So one thing that's kind of scary with the denatured alcohol is if you spray it on your piece, you'll notice sometimes, oh, here we go, that you start to get a little bit of ghosting, which is this right here. So it can be a lot more extreme, and that gets a little scary because if the whole piece looks white, you think you might have ruined it, but that's just part of the alcohol. It will be removed during the next step, which is the sanding. So don't worry about that if it happens. If you'd like to avoid it, then just concentrate on spraying your rag as opposed to spraying the actual piece, and that will avoid a lot of that. And then what we're gonna do is sand it. So you wanna start with like a 180 or 220 grit. Sand the whole thing, always stay with the grain. And what that's gonna do is those little micro abrasions, and then wipe the dust off, and then ready for primer. Let me know if you have any questions, because I think we're ready to get started. Oh, we're talking about supplies. So the other thing you need, this is some of the sandpaper I was just referencing. This is 120 and then also 220. So you want to have a few different kinds because you want to use the highest grit that you can and still have it be effective. If you use a super low grit, like an 80 grit, and you rub it all over, you're just gonna scratch it. And then when you paint it, it's gonna stay in those scratches. As opposed to if you did like a 220, that would be the appropriate level of sanding. Because we're not trying to sand off the finish, all we're trying to do is make it so that your paint can adhere nicely, knock down any issues that it has over time, smooth out some of the scratches. That's what your sanding is to accomplish. It's not to remove the whole finish. A lot of people kind of get, I don't know, weary about that. So it's not as bad as you might think. And then if you do still have some scratches that have not sanded out, you can use something like a wood filler and then fill those up. It's just a putty. And once it's dried, sand that down, and that'll remove any of those really deep gouges. So based on that, I think we're ready to go. So I'm going to move this out of the way. And then let me know who's watching, if you're ready to paint, if you have a piece in mind, what kind of questions you have. I do have the ability to see things, comments and such forever, so if you're watching on the replay, please participate. Let me know what kind of questions you have, anything I can help you with. I'd love to see the projects that you're working on as well. So that'll be fun. The group will be open. Sorry, I'm just trying to move all this stuff out of the way. Until October 31st. So that is plenty of time for you to watch the prep video, do what you need to do, and join us for the actual painting video on Saturday, and then complete your project. And then I can answer any questions you have. So this is a nice solid maple piece. So what I'm gonna do is remove the hardware real quick. These are just kind of tiny handles. And then I'm going to put them in my baggie. So I will be using my drill. Again, this is not a necessity for this kind of project, but it is handy. I have it here. Thank you so much for joining. There is, you can always watch us later too. So if you get busy, don't worry, it'll be here. Just being nosy for a second. And also, so are you guys novices? Have you ever painted a piece of furniture? Do you have a little business? Like, I'd love to know where you're at so that I can help you, you know, get the most out of it. Okay, so there's that one. Let's do the other one while I'm here. So I know know some people just joined, so what we're doing is prepping this piece because we're gonna do this whole piece from start to finish. A lot of people ask me questions about our prep process because it is a bit, I don't know, I don't want to say controversial, but a lot of people want to avoid prepping their furniture because it's not really that fun, but it is necessary and it's going to help you avoid so many issues that people see down the line. So a lot of people have problems with yellowing top coats, things bonding, cracking, adhering, anything, and most of those are usually covered by doing the proper prep. And pieces are usually pretty dirty. So you see all that nasty gunk? That is all behind the handle. So even pieces that look pretty clean, once you get into it, they're usually pretty nasty. So here's my baggie of hardware. I'm going to label it and put it in my designated hardware spot because it is quite annoying when you can't find the hardware that you need. You should also take a minute to, at some point during this prep process, kind of vacuum out the interior. A lot of times you'll see some, dust and things that have accumulated over time. So this is a nice time to give it a quick cleaning all over. We're gonna focus on the exterior, but we can also do, with the interior, our favorite thing is to actually refresh them with a little bit of like hemp oil. And that is the last thing that I do because oils are going to interfere with your ability for the paint to bond to the piece. So I don't like to do that until the end when I know that everything's already on there nicely. So now I have my denatured alcohol and water, 50-50 mix. Oh, whatever. So you can use either paper towels or the shop towels are better. Oops. So I will spray this piece, the towel. Like I said, if you spray the actual piece, sometimes you get that like ghosting white, and that can be a little scary, although it does sand off nicely. So it goes away. So all I'm doing is really rubbing it down. This is actually pretty clean. So that looks pretty good. And then once you get to that point, I like to give it another quick clean. You could also use like a Scotch-Brite pad if you find that just wiping it isn't enough. So if you need to really get in there, Scotch-Brite pad, a sponge, the back of it, that'll help you clean it nicely and also kind of start the sanding process. So it's a little bit of a 2-for-1 deal there. And then other one. So one of the things I love about furniture painting is that anybody can do it. And it's really a quite rewarding hobby or activity to do, because then you get to look back on it and think about the before and after, and I'm such a sucker for before and afters. See, pretty good. And then, you can always have that piece around and it's very satisfying. I used to work a corporate job in sales, and even when you have a killer month, the next month you start at 0. So you don't get much satisfaction there. Whereas this, I can look back and see all the pieces that we've done, and that is quite satisfying. And as a hobby, it's very relaxing. This is gonna be the worst part. So the painting is the fun part. This is the necessary part. But it doesn't have to be terrible. All you have to do is wipe it down, sand it quick, and then remove the dust, and you can move on from it. So that's it for cleaning. We're going to continue with the rest of the piece. I already did that side. And so can you see the issues down here? So when I was talking about so you can see over here, the finish is in pretty good shape. I did wipe it down already. This is a planked side, so it does actually have a little bit of lifting here from one of the pieces. So we will be sanding that down to make that smoother. And then it does have some lines in here. which will probably pop out during the painting process. So it's good to know. That might be something that you'd want to incorporate. So, you know, that could be something that you paint different stripes on it and make that really a point of interest. Or you could do something else. But knowing what kind of features your piece has will help you plan your design and make sure that it coordinates well. See, and now look how yucky that is. You never know. These pieces really, sometimes they look great, and then you start cleaning and they are not great. But you can see them going through the paper towels pretty quickly. I will switch to the blue shop towels and you'll see less. And down here, the finish has already started failing. So this is potentially hard to see. I hope you can see that. It's all kind of cut up. It's starting to lift a little bit. It's all scratched. You know, they might have had animals or whatever. So this is an area that I would definitely recommend priming, which we'll do, because the actual paint is going to settle in there differently. And that is a potential issue for the stains to come through and get that bleed through. And bleed through is one of the most frustrating and common issues that people have with furniture painting. And that is avoided by priming. And also trying not to sand through the finish too much is another way to limit that. Because when you sand through the finish and start exposing the wood underneath, that gives you opportunity for the tannins, which is basically just wood, I don't know, stains, to pop through if the finish is abraded. If it's still solid and you paint over it, you probably won't see the bleed through, or not as much. But if you have a spot where you sand through or it's failing like this, that's a great spot for bleed through to happen. So instead of doing that, we will just prime it. I don't think we're going to prime the whole piece because I kind of want to show you, you know, if there are any issues, how to overcome them. And it's great to have these actual examples. I'll share a picture of bleed through in the group later. We have a piece that we were working on, and you can very clearly see it was mahogany, and it was a bed, so we sanded through some spots, and there's bright red, purple, pink bleed through that popped out. So then to fix that, we just hit it with more shellac, and that seals it. So shellac is the wonder product for primers. It really works as a, it seals everything. So bleed through, shellac is the only thing that's gonna work. Nothing water-based. Oil-based is potentially going to combat it, but maybe not. Whereas shellac will stop the bleed through. You might need 2 coats, but that is the only thing that I have found that is actually effective. And it's kind of a lesser known product because it is semi-difficult to work with. It's very loose. You use denatured alcohol to clean it up. So a lot of people just don't like it. Or they don't know about it, so they don't use it, but we use it all the time. And I'll show you the primers in just a minute. And really, this is it for cleaning. So it's not a terrible process. This piece is in pretty good shape. I'm trying to get some of that ghosting for you to see. But during your cleaning process, you should also be looking at your details and thinking about your design, where it might be interesting to have more texture, whether you want to go for a super smooth finish or something with more texture, then that is going to tell you the level of sanding that you need to do with the piece. If you want super smooth or high gloss and super smooth, you have to sand very, very well. Your issues will be very apparent if you have a texture and then you put a shiny like top coat or anything on top of that. any issues that you did not find during the sanding process will be highlighted. So if you're trying to avoid that, then you need to do extra care with your sanding. If you're looking for texture, then you can do a little bit less sanding. So there's a few, ways that you can modify your prep process based on the finish that you're going for. So next we're going to do sanding. So we've cleaned it, now it's sanding. So what I'm going to use, I'm going to start with my 180 grit sanding pad. So this is really nice. It has a nice foam back. So it's nice on your hands, and it's also really great for distressing because you don't get those like finger marks that you potentially do sometimes. So this, you can see a little bit of that ghosting and issues there still. You do want to pay attention to the handles as well. Many times those are indented or have accumulation of grime. And depending if you're going to change them or not, that might be apparent on the new handles and the new finish. So you might want to sand those down, or if you're going to go right back with the same piece, same handles, then it's not such an issue. This is a case that you should wear a dust mask. I'm not going to right now, but you should. So flat hand is what I like to use, and then long, even strokes. And you can see that really powdering up. That's usually a good sign. It means that it's definitely necessary to sand it, and that you're going to have a nice smooth finish after. So sanding is also a great time to think about how you're going to distress it. So you can kind of preview it. If you have a lot of details and you sand over it, you'll start to see where they're also going to come out again when you do your distressing. So you can think about places that you want to highlight that or not. And you just want to go around the piece, make sure you get all the surface area. You want to stay with the grain as much as possible throughout this entire process. So for sanding, definitely for painting, top coating, stay with the grain unless it is impossible. Because you'll start to see, like if I scratch this, if I sanded it across the grain, that would probably be apparent in our finished layers of paint as well. So then we'd have to sand that down to try to get that to go away. So we're kind of just creating more work. If you stay with the grain, it's much better. And then to remove the sanding dust, you can either use a wet rag. I like to use these microfiber cloths. So these are just like regular cleaning cloths, but they really trap so much of the dust. And it also kind of catches on areas that you didn't sand well enough. So it gives you a little bit of a, I guess a check to make sure that you did enough. Ooh, see, it keeps getting stuck on the corner. So this is now sanded. You notice that we did not need to get through the finish here. All we're doing is kind of roughing up the existing finish because it's in good shape. It's not pretty, but it will paint quite nicely. We did a little bit more on the handles because I wanted to knock down some of the scratches and accumulation that were there from the handles. We are going to put the same ones on, so I'm not super worried about that. You could sand that down completely and maybe fill the edges if you wanted to. You could even plug up these holes with wood filler and then sand it down smooth and place your handle somewhere else. So if you wanted to do, like in this case, we just have one single handle. We could either use that existing one or alter it, whatever. But this would be a good time, to make that decision about the handles before you get into painting. For this piece, so we saw how to do the drawers. I don't think we need to do all those live. It's just going to take too long. I am going to use my dust mask because it is getting pretty dusty. So this is standard dust mask. They're available on Amazon, super easy, super awkward. But for this, we're going to do, get these out of the way. Oh, also, you notice I move stuff around all the time? They're all on dollies or on benches that move. Super handy if you have a furniture painting business or if you do this a lot. We really like using those dollies because you can just move stuff around. I don't have to call anyone to help, and it makes it really easy. So here we have this side. I can feel the ledges here from the, you can see the planks there, right? Yeah, enough. So this was a bunch of pieces of wood that were glued together and then made into this piece. It is solid wood, so that's great. You can paint veneer as well. So a lot of people have questions about that. Veneer is just a thin layer of wood. It's usually decorative. And as long as it's intact and it's not lifting, you can paint over it and treat that like pretty much like a regular solid piece of wood. If it's lifting or cracking, that's when you could run into issues and when you do want to address it. So if we had veneer here and it was lifting, it usually kind of bubbles, or if you squish it, it moves a little bit. Then you can put some wood glue under it and put like a weight on it to kind of squish it into place. And that way, you want to wipe off all the excess. So that will then make it secure. Because what you're looking for in this entire piece is a surface that is clean, dry, microabraded, and stable. The reason why is because you have to build on a stable foundation. Just like when you're building a house, even if you have a gorgeous, beautiful house, but if you have a crumbling foundation, the house will fall eventually, and it's going to impact your finish, it's going to impact the house. So that's why you need to make sure that you have that stable surface to build upon, because you can't have a gorgeous result without having a stable surface below. So that's why the prep work's so important, and that's why you have to do it. So, so we're gonna go with now painting. This also had a sticker here, so I think that this will sand off. If not, I'll come back in with a little bit of like the crud cutter and let that eat through the adhesive there. So. Again, always going with the direction of the grain. That is going to help our finish. And then down here, it is textured. Something has started eating through the finish, maybe had some water around it, but it's much more stable up here than down here. So this will get some additional sanding and then some priming as well to make sure that we have that sanded smooth and then sealed in so there's no additional things coming out. Okay. So, I mean, that's all it takes, really. It's just a couple minutes. This whole process to prep a piece is usually an hour for a standard piece, from clean to sand and taping. So this is a case where I'm going to grab a little bit higher grit. This is a 180 pad, so I will get I think I have 120 right here. So this is 120 sandpaper. I like to fold it vertically and then take off one side and then fold it. You want to get a piece that fits in your hand nicely. So for me, this works out well. Dan has another method. He also has different preferences in the shop. So he doesn't like the sandpaper, but I find it has, I don't know, I call it no slip grip. and it's a little bit more easy to grip. So I like it. Again, he does not. So you will find a lot of preferences are very personal, and there's not a lot of right and wrong. It's really about trying things and figuring out which ones you like. Like as far as paint goes, I'll be using General Finishes because we are a General Finishes retailer, and you get a discount on that if you order it in our store this month. Because I like that. I like that it has a long open time. I like that it dries really smooth. It is an acrylic water-based paint, so that means it's really easy to work with. And it also, I think it helps people look like a much better painter than they actually are. But it's also quite a professional product. So that's why we like it. Because it's trustworthy. And the results are really great. So now that just took down to the level that I need for this finish. But some people so chalk paints are another very common type of furniture paint. And those are typically more textured. So like Annie Sloan, Maison Blanche, a lot of those are very common. We really like Maison Blanche. But they are textured. So when you put them on, that's exactly where they're gonna stay. They're not gonna lay down at all, which means that those brush strokes are going to be apparent in most cases, which may be something that you like or maybe something that you don't prefer. So that's where, again, that personal preference comes in. And also, you might change based on the piece. So some pieces, if they are really highly detailed or they have a lot of really great moldings, chalk paint is great for accenting those and having some fun with the waxes. But a piece like this, where it's nice and smooth, I'm going for a smooth finish. So that's where I decide to go with General Finishes most of the time. And we will be using that for this class. I'm trying to decide between 4 colors, which I'll show you real quick. Oh, no, I won't. But a lot of you know them. So I was thinking about antique white, but when you're painting white, it's much higher potential for bleed through. So that's a factor in that consideration. Persian blue, which is a really pretty green blue. It's very light. I always like it quite a lot. And then coastal blue was another consideration, or I think it was Queenstown gray, but that's a really deep dark gray. And sometimes painting those deep colors can also be a challenge because you might get more lint that kind of appears. So things to consider, but I haven't totally decided. So let me know what you think if you have any preferences. So this is now nice and smooth. I have cut through the wood there a little bit. Like a second camera. So that would be an issue, a point of potential bleed through that I would expect it to see it there because I cut through the stain and now we have some raw wood showing. So we'll probably see some bleed through come through there. So I'm going to prevent that by hitting it with primer, shellac, which we can talk about. Yeah, let's talk about that. Yes, I love Persian blue every time. It's so pretty. I'll show you those two. So for anyone who's not super familiar with the colors, this is what I was talking about. So we have antique white, which would be very nice, maybe a little boring. and we'd have to fight the bleed through more. Or Persian blue. So this is one of my favorites. I love this one. It's really, really nice. It's kind of a green, blue, gray. It tends to work in like almost every situation. It really looks nice. And then we also have coastal blue. So this is a really deep navy. Queenstown gray. So this is a really deep gray. And I think what we're going to end up doing is actually using this Persian because I love it. I always think it's fun. And those handles are pretty deep colored. So I thought that they would pop nicely. So that's also a consideration in a lot of my pieces is the hardware. So I think that'll be a nice combo. If it was on blue or gray, I don't think we'd have enough definition there. So that's my thought process. I do want to tell you about primers. So with primer, it's kind of a good, better, best situation. And you never know exactly which one is going to work for your project. So you could start with the water-based primer. It comes in a blue label. Oops, that's not it. It looks like this, but it has a blue label. It says 1, 2, 3 bin, water-based primer, it's blue. That is a good primer. We typically use it for walls, and it helps with adhesion, helps a little bit with stain blocking. It helps you transition from very dark colors to light ones. So if you're gonna have a black or a really deep piece and you want it to be white, it's gonna take a lot of coats of paint. So in order to prevent all the coats of paint, you could use a primer first, and that would function better to help you transition from that dark color to the light. So that would be a situation where a water-based primer would be helpful, but it's not gonna block a lot of deep stains, it's not gonna block tannins. Its adhesion level is probably similar to like a chalk paint, so it's not gonna help you a whole lot more than doing additional coats of your paint. So you gotta weigh that out. The next step up, a better one, would be this. So this is CoverStain, this is oil-based primer, and these are all available like any hardware store. They're very common, they're also on, should be able to get them on Amazon too. Oh, I've linked them in our notes, in that Furniture Painting Essentials document. So this is really great for adhesion. If you have stains, I would use an oil-based primer. If you have some tannins, it'll probably help with that, but it might not do everything. So you could try the oil-based, but it is oil, so you do need to use mineral spirits. You need to use a different brush than you use for your water-based products. And also when you're using even water-based primer, it sticks really well. So I would not use your favorite brush. Don't use your Klingons, use a cheaper brush, because then if it doesn't wash out well, it's okay. Because it sticks really well, it stays around. So this is a nice stain blocker and adhesion. It'll also help you transition from those dark to lights better than the water-based one would. But if you're gonna use a difficult product, what I do is go right to the shellac. So this is the best stuff. This is Bin shellac-based primer. It's a red label. The labels are always this consistent. So this is really great for blocking those tannins. This is the thing that's gonna do it. It's the best at blocking stains. It's the best at adhesion. It works under nearly any finish, and it has a very high hide as well. Hide the darker color to get the light. And it dries very fast. So it dries in 45 minutes to, I don't think it's cured, but it is dry for you to build on. It also blocks odors. So if you have a really stinky piece, shellac is going to seal that in. If you have the tannins that are bleeding through, shellac will seal that in. So this is the best choice for a primer if you need to use one. But it's also white. So this is white, and if you have a black piece, or you want to have a black piece, and then you use a white primer everywhere, and then you paint your color on, say black, and then you go to distress it. Now you have that white showing through, which may or may not be the look that you're going for. So that can be a struggle to see that white base coat pop through on your finished piece. So in order to combat that, we searched high and low for this product. So this is clear bin shellac. Same stuff, white, clear. And now, if we are to apply this, you basically wouldn't know. It does all the same for adhesion, odor blocking. It doesn't help with the color transition because it is clear. But if you just dress it back, you still have your wood color showing through. So that is really key. And this is clear bin de-waxed shellac. There's also a synthetic shellac. That's not the same. We don't like that one. But this also works for odors. So if you have pet odors, moldy odors, fire or smoke damage, says it all right there. This is really, really good, but it's also super hard to find. We went to, I don't know, 5 different hardware stores in order to find someone who would actually order this for us because it's not typically stocked on the shelves. And then the manager was asking us, like, why on earth we'd want this stuff. But if you're a furniture painter, it makes a lot of sense. So this is really, really good, really hard to find, but worth it if you are a professional furniture painter. And that's my spiel on primers. So if you have any questions, please let me know because this is always a point of confusion for a lot of people. But basically, if you want to have the least amount of complications, prime, use this, especially if you're going to do white. This is a great way to transition to that white and also not have those tannins pull through once you apply the top coat. Because if you used a water-based top coat, sometimes it'll pull through tannins, and even though it was blocked with your color, it's pulling it through the paint unless there's a barrier to stop that tannin stain issue. I think that's enough. But let me know if you have any questions. The last thing that we're gonna do tonight is actually tape off our drawers. Or one drawer. What we like to do, because we really appreciate clean lines, and sorry, thought I had all the stuff. So this is painter's tape. Super duper handy. You can use it to tape off any areas that you don't want to paint. So what we like to do is tape off drawers, especially on the sides. So I think that's kind of a telltale sign of a professional finish, is if you open the drawers and you see nice clean brush marks or paint lines. So what we'll do, and it's different on every piece, I do like to keep the dovetail there. So I'll line a piece of tape right there, continue it along the side, right along there, and the other side, and also the bottom. And that is going to create a nice line for us to paint. And we won't have to be as careful with our brush strokes. So it also saves you time, because if you are to hand paint this, which I certainly could, then you have to be very careful about where your brush strokes are and where all your lines are. And it takes you a little bit longer to cut that angle point. Whereas if you have a trustworthy tape in place, you can kind of zip along and not be as, oh, and that's the end of it, careful about your brush strokes. So that saves you time, and it also elevates your finish. And that's always what we're looking for. Looking for ways to simplify, but also get better results. There's some really cool stuff I can't find right now. But, so we like to do this to get the clean line. And painter's tape comes in 1 inch and 1.5 inches. It also comes in 2 inch. So if you really don't trust your brush work, you can go with a much larger painter's tape. And then you'd have a better barrier for you to watch. And then, so So this side, let's see if we can get a good angle there. Nope. Well, you're just gonna have to trust me. So we're just going to run it along the side of the drawer and continue it along the bottom. And that's it. But now, anyone who's considering spraying their finishes, or if you're very focused on keeping the drawer clean on the interior, what we also like to do is there is this really cool tape that has some masking film that folds out of it. So you can run it along here, and then it's like a plastic bag that kind of folds down, and then you can seal it up. So that way, if you're spraying your finishes, you're not going to be spraying the interior of the drawer or the sides that we just taped off so nicely. So that's another thing that we like to do, but I can't find the stuff right now, so I'll have to show you later. But that's it. So we have now cleaned, we removed the hardware, we cleaned it, we sanded it, and then we taped it off. And that's it for prep work. So it doesn't take too long. I have been talking the whole time, so it's been slowing me down. But I do recommend doing those steps to secure a really great finish. Depending on your existing substrate and what you're looking to do for your finish, you could do more or less of the cleaning or sanding, because if you want a smoother finish with high gloss, you're going to do more sanding. If you're looking for textured, farmhouse, chippy, you're going to do less sanding. So you have some flexibility there based on your finish that you're looking for, and also the state of the current piece. So if it's super duper grimy, you're going to spend longer cleaning it. If it's just kind of been used and a little old, you can zip through that part a little bit. So it doesn't always take a fixed amount of time, but it is worthwhile, because this is going to help make sure that you have really great results and that you don't have issues at the end, because that is the worst. When you do a piece and you're really proud of it and you're really happy with the way it looks, and then you have some kind of issue like bleed through at the end, or crackling, or yellowing of the top coats, that's frustrating. That stinks, hurts a little bit. It can really discourage you if you're just starting out. So that's why I like to make sure that you learn the right way to do it, and then you can figure out which ways you want to do and what works best for your process. But like I said, I've been doing this for quite a long time. I do have training in it, and as our instructor always said, your prep work is only, or your finish is only as good as your prep work. So if you do great prep, you'll have a great piece. If you just jump right in and paint a crumbling finish, it's gonna crumble and your finish will not be good. So that's it. Thank you for joining me. My name is Kelly with Captiva Home. Please let me know if you have any questions. I can still see them here. You can also put them in the group. I'd love to see what you're working on and offer a little bit of guidance if I can. So have a great night, and I'll talk to you soon.